I'm Teresa Caraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. My title today is Was Schicklgruber an Actor Playing Hitler? And the full text of this will be at thirdparadigm.substack.com. This is a hopeful post. You don't need wars or revolutions. You just need to figure things out for yourself. You don't have to convince anybody else. And that is happening at the velocity of light. In response to my post on Gottfried Feder, which I'll link at the end, Tonica of Visceral Adventures sent me to the collected works of Gottfried Feder, which answered some questions and raised others. I've told her that if a person who is changing their mind is the second most powerful force in the universe, I am bending the cosmos. But the first most powerful force is two people who are asking the same question with more regard for getting the right answer than in being right. So I feel in good company with Tonica and others here in our circle of vigorous inquiry. Today, I'll start by stating the questions at the root of all my branches of research and thought. And I'll tie the etymology of Aryan to the sociology of hierarchy. I'll summarize the history of the world wars and explain the role of Madame Blavatsky and Theosophy in bringing Nazi, Aryan, and the swastika to the German Workers' Party of Gottfried Feder. This bound the mystical representation of the feminine with the swastika to its opposite of the Aryan patriarchy, weaponizing both as symbols of a fictional German supremacist ideology. Breaking the spellbinding power of words means not repeating lies. The name Hitler is a lie. We don't know what his patrilineal name would be. The only ancestral name we have is Schicklgruber, from his maternal grandmother. Therefore, this is the name I'll use to denote the person playing the role of Hitler. I'll delve into the patrimonial clues of Schicklgruber's father's father. Regardless of whether this was Mayer Amschel Rothschild, the important question is whether Schicklgruber was Rothschild's agent within a play-acting script that subverted Germany's anti-Rothschild rebellion from within, while seeming to lead it. I'll quote from Judea's War on Germany to show how Hitler is set up by denouncing him, and how that forced him to create Israel at Germany's expense. I'll end with a quote from Feder on Rothschild and with Schicklgruber's foreword to Feder's work, The German State Under National Socialism. Schicklgruber lays claim to Feder's ideas only to invert them and annihilate with utmost violence the greatest hope to come out of the 20th century. Distilling down to the essence. Here are the questions that we're asking at their essence. 1. Looking at anthropology, how and when did hierarchy and obedience take precedence over a morality of equality? 2. What came before, or was it always this way? Is hierarchy necessary or natural? 3. How has hierarchy been challenged, and why did they fail? 4. How would we do it differently? What would we replace it with to return to a morality of equality? While I haven't been as prolific on YouTube and Substack, I have been writing up a storm in researching my book, Oh My Goddess. Taking a break from that to go back to this post in which I'd previously written those questions, I find Oh My Goddess addresses them in a way I can only describe as uncanny, once again proving that when I get the question formulated, the answer falls into my hand like overripe fruit. The hierarchy. The first 3 questions use the word hierarchy. In Oh My Goddess, I'm looking at the anthropology of goddess cultures and how they were destroyed by Aryan invasions, usurped by Aryan religions, and erased by Aryan languages. And now I find the origin of the heir in Aryan is the heir in hierarchy, the heir in heir. It's the divinely chosen one with the supreme right over his brothers and their, and note the heir in their, kingdoms. Inherent in this, and note the heir in inherent, is the right of that family to rule over the world. Aryan comes from early Proto-Indo-European as Heros, Heros. Since Proto-Indo-European is Aryan, this is redundant. Aryan means Heros, or chosen by God, the rulers or masters in hierarchy, the chosen archons. From Anatolian, it's peer, free man. Hittite, comrade, peer, companion, friend. And that comes from free or free man, not being a slave. Nada ara, not proper to the community. From Wikipedia, the original meaning had a clear emphasis on the in-group status of the free men as distinguished from that of outsiders, particularly those captured and incorporated into the group as slaves. In Anatolia, the base word has come to emphasize personal relationship, whereas it took a more ethnic meaning among Indo-Iranians, presumably because most of the unfree An-Arya who lived among them were captives from other ethnic groups. So the Aryans are foreigners who rule, same meaning as the Hekakasut or Hyksos. And the word has nothing to do with race, but rather caste status. It has no meaning without its antonym, Anarya, or slaves. The Aryans were distinguished as free because everyone else was not. Ares is also the Hellenist war of God, the warlord. He's the son of Zeus from the Aryan sky father Dias. The heir of the Aryans is the warlord. The name Hellenist, like Helios, means sun god worshippers, like Helen of Troy and Constantine's mother Helena. Women represent territories, not females, who are beneath mention. Pre-World War II in a nutshell. Who were not the Aryans? Post-World War II, we think of them as the Caucasian race that Hitler and the Nazis strove to preserve as true Germans, eliminating the Jews in death camps. In my third paradigm series on World War Truth, I show this as more inversion krivda. The Nazis were Ashkenazis, Zionist thugs, not the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Prior to the World Wars, Kaiser Wilhelm was forced into the Great War by Rothschild, who funded it with loans to be repaid handsomely from the spoils. After 2 years, Germany had effectively won, but Wilhelm offered peace with no annexation or reparations, thwarting Rothschild. This infuriated the German General Hindenburg. Rothschild told England and France not to accept the peace, although hugely favorable to them, and he would get the U.S. to join in exchange for Palestine. Generals Hindenburg and Ludendorff gave Wilson the excuse to enter the war with the unrestricted use of submarines. When this had the predictable result, they sent Wilhelm a message they could not hold the front for 2 hours, and he must make an immediate armistice. At the Paris Accords, the Balfour Declaration was presented by the Ashkenazis, to the surprise of Germans who then knew they'd been sold out. The genocidal reparations, military-enforced food extraction, and engineered hyperinflation made the 20s roar with anguish on the German side and decadence in Weimar Berlin. Ashkenazis bought up German property for pfennig, and German savings evaporated before their eyes. The ingenuity of Germans responded. An obscure clerk named Gottfried Feder developed an economic plan of sovereign money that was not reliant on bankers. The Rothschild Bank was nationalized and German assets reappropriated. Rothschild himself was imprisoned but later released. From London, he unfurled the tentacles that would wrap around Germany's neck. Ludendorff found an accidental candidate called Hitler, who he funded and promoted. Hindenburg was elected as German president. Wealthy industrialists gave Hindenburg 3 million Reichsmarks to appoint Hitler as Reichskanzler, the chancellor. Time magazine credited him with Feder's economic miracle, lauding him as Man of the Year. Judea declared war on Germany, blaming Hitler and forcing him to send $100 million worth of farm and construction equipment to build Israel at Germany's expense. Let's take a closer look at this time between the wars. Theosophy and the Aryans. Joe Atwill has an article called The Freemasonic Invention of the Nazi Party. It chronicles how, post-World War I, Ludendorff hunted diligently through the Bavarian mountains for a red-headed peasant girl to play the part of a German Joan of Arc, who could be sold as a goddess, a divine messenger sent straight from Valhalla to wake up the Germans and save them from their bondage by leading them to victory and everlasting glory. This is notable for the red hair, which was the Aryans in ancient Egypt. But alas, no suitable girl was found to play the goddess. Instead, Schicklgruber was told to join the German Workers' Party, the DAP, at Ludendorff's behest and against the rules of the Reichswehr. Joe writes, this accidental candidate is then somehow recognized by Dieter Eckart as the messianic leader, or Maitreya, that he and Theosophy had been looking for, and he starts to groom him. Ludendorff then agrees with Eckart that the accidental candidate may be the Messiah he has been looking for, and he funds Hitler. The described process is so illogical as to completely defy belief, Joe concludes. Eckart introduces Schicklgruber as the long-awaited savior and coaches him on what to wear and how to speak. Eckart states, "Follow Hitler. He will dance, but it is I who will have called the tune. I have initiated him into the secret doctrine, opened his centers in vision, and given him the means to communicate with the powers. Do not mourn for me. I shall have influenced history more than any German." Under this tutelage, Schicklgruber adopted the swastika from India as his party symbol, and Nazi, the Hebrew word for prince, as his party name. Theosophists believe Aryans originated in India from thousands of years prior to the Rig Vedas, and are the supreme race. The books from Schicklgruber's library included Madame Blavatsky's The Secret Doctrine, rumored to have been kept by his bedside. With the Habaru/Hebrew serving the true Aryan hierarchy, which may have been the Rothschilds or their masters, this provides layer after layer of inversion. Atwill's article goes deep into the Nazi connections to royalty, Freemasonry, and British New York banking. It is well worth reading in its entirety. The Grand Patrimony of Hitler. Following my rules for Have a Better Argument. 1. State the question. Did Hitler have a secret identity? Was he related to Rothschild? 2. Define the terms. Secret means covert, hidden, obscured. Related is by blood, money, or power, direct or indirect. 3. Why it matters. If Germany was sabotaged from within, they didn't fail. Their economic policies were sound. Their social practices were successful. They could have weathered the trade boycott and come out stronger. They didn't need to produce munitions and armaments. They didn't need to expand. And if Hitler was related by blood to Rothschild, the entire World War II narrative unravels by pulling on a single thread. The lessons we've learned from Germany are wrong if they were defeated from within. If Hitler was a secret Zionist, whether or not he was a secret Rothschild, it's good news for other sovereignty movements like ours. We're not up against insurmountable forces. And it circumvents the standard narrative if everything the Nazis are accused of was really done by the Ashkenazis. I think there could be some retractions if that was established. We know two things for certain. 1, Hitler is a made-up name. And 2, we don't know his paternal grandfather from whom he would have taken his patrilineal name. So the only name that gives us any clue is his paternal grandmother, Schicklgruber. During the Third Reich, Hitler gave Hans Frank the job of figuring out whether he was part Jewish, which was a rampant rumor. And so he was given the documentation to be able to disprove this. It writes, "At that time, Frank undertook this delicate task, and he declared in the autobiography written in his cell at Nuremberg that what he discovered made it appear possible, if not likely, that Hitler's father had been half Jewish. The main facts are clear enough. Hitler's grandmother, a Fräulein Maria Anna Schicklgruber, worked as a cook for a well-to-do Jewish family named Frankenberger. The Frankenbergers had a son who was 19 years old at the time Hitler's 42-year-old grandmother bore a child out of wedlock, and the Jewish family paid for the support of the child up to the time it was 14 years old. Frank wrote that the money was given to avoid a public scandal. Apparently, although Frank does not say so, Fräulein Schicklgruber had threatened to bring a suit against the Frankenbergers. Frank wrote that many letters were subsequently exchanged between them and Hitler's grandmother, which seemed to him to be evidence of a cordial relationship. Nevertheless, both he and Hitler were convinced that the child was actually the offspring of a mill worker, Johann Georg Heidler, a second cousin of Fräulein Schicklgruber, who 5 years after the birth of the child married her and legitimized her son. But Frank, writing in Nuremberg no longer for the benefit of the Führer, was also of the opinion that it was not out of the question that Hitler's father, who later changed his name from Heidler to Hitler, was half Jewish. So, we're left with Adolf's opinion that he's the grandson of second cousins who didn't marry until she was 47, while she collected money and continued to from a Jewish family for a child that they knew wasn't theirs. If this was Heidler's child, why not marry her at the time? Why wait until the child was 5? But perhaps the Frankenbergers were another layer of obfuscation by Adolf's handlers. The supposed 19-year-old son would be 23 years younger than Adolf's grandmother at the time, or less than half her age. Yet we know from the later prohibition against German women under 46 working as domestics in Jewish households that rape and seduction was common and not by the sons. I've read since that there were no Jews allowed to live in Graz, where the Frankenbergers were said to live. However, the Rothschilds got their start in Frankfurt. That's a thin thread, but if Heidler was always Adolf's grandfather, why make up the story about the Frankenbergers? It served no purpose for Hans Frank to make this up. It made him no less guilty, and the letters could have been demanded to be produced. But if Adolf's grandfather was actually Rothschild, then a false story that could be later disproven would be a better cover than a denial. The war on Germany is a war on Hitler. The agitation by worldwide Jewry, as they called themselves, for a war against Germany preceded World War II by 6 years. It was after the Germans had nationalized the Rothschild banks and had appropriated the fortunes made by Jews through usury to Germans, including the Rothschilds. No violence had been reported against any Jew. From an archive on The Jews Declare War on Germany, here is how it started in front-page ads in the Daily Express in March of 1933. The Israeli people around the world declare economic and financial war against Germany. 14 million Jews stand together as one man to declare war against Germany. The Jewish wholesaler will forsake his firm, the banker his stock exchange, the merchant his commerce, and the pauper his pitiful shed, in order to join together in a holy war against Hitler's people. Now, other versions say that the prince will forsake his counting house. Note that Germany is Hitler's people. Then Samuel Untermyer was reported in the New York Times as saying on his radio show, "Each of you, Jew and Gentile alike, who has not already enlisted in this sacred war, should do so now and here. It is not sufficient that you should buy no goods made in Germany. You must refuse to deal with any merchant or shopkeeper who sells any German-made goods, or who patronizes German ships or shipping. We will undermine the Hitler regime and bring the German people to their senses by destroying their export trade on which their very existence depends." So they're undermining the Hitler regime by destroying German exports on which they're dependent because of the annexation of fertile farmland by the Rothschild treason of World War I. Samuel Untermyer was a Jewish leader and close friend of Presidents Wilson and Roosevelt. Untermyer's admonition resulted in a boycott of Woolworths when some German-made women's stockings were found in their inventory. From a biography of Bernard Baruch, joining with Samuel Untermyer in calling for a war against Germany, Bernard Baruch at the same time was promoting preparations for war against Germany. "I emphasize that the defeat of Germany and Japan and their elimination from world trade would give Britain a tremendous opportunity to swell her foreign commerce in both volume and profit." Bernard Baruch was a presidential advisor to Wilson, Roosevelt, and Truman, promoting war for no reason other than profit. Vladimir Jabotinsky, founder of the Jewish terrorist group Irgun Zvi Leumi, wrote, "For months now, the struggle against Germany is waged by each Jewish community at each conference in all our syndicates and by each Jew all over the world. There is reason to believe that our part in this struggle has general value. We will trigger a spiritual and material war on all the world against Germany's ambitions to become once again a great nation, to recover lost territories and colonies. But our Jewish interests demand the complete destruction of Germany. Collectively and individually, the German nation is a threat to us Jews." Jabotinsky admits that Germany's ambitions are to be again a great nation, not empire, and to recover what was lost by the treason of German Jews in creating World War I. What could be the Jewish interests that demand the complete destruction of a sovereign nation? Only the inability to extract profits and the example that other nations might claim their sovereignty also and eliminate parasitic relationships. In 1934, Emil Ludwig Kohn stated bluntly, "Hitler will have no war, but we will force it on him, not this year, but soon." But it's not, of course, the Jews who fought that war when the time came. In March of 1939, Brigadier General George Van Horn Moseley was quoted in the New York Tribune as saying, "The war now proposed is for the purpose of establishing Jewish hegemony throughout the world." Chaim Weizmann, president of the World Jewish Congress, head of the Jewish Agency, and later president of Israel, confirmed this in September 1939 in the London Times and London Jewish Chronicle. "I wish to confirm in the most explicit manner the declaration which I and my colleagues made during the last months and especially in the last week, that the Jews stand by Great Britain and will fight on the side of the democracies. Our urgent desire is to give effect to these declarations. We wish to do so in a way entirely consonant with the general scheme of British action, and therefore would place ourselves, in matters big and small, under the coordinating direction of His Majesty's government. The Jewish Agency is ready to enter into immediate arrangements for utilizing Jewish manpower, technical ability, resources, etc." By December 1942, all pretense of that relationship was dropped. Jews were not standing by Britain. It was Britain, the U.S., and the Allies fighting for Jewry, while they provided money and propaganda. Weizmann wrote, "We are not denying and are not afraid to confess that this is our war, and that it is waged for the liberation of Jewry. Stronger than all fronts together is our front, that of Jewry. We are not only giving this war our financial support, on which the entire war production is based. We are not only giving our full propaganda power, which is the moral energy that keeps this war going. The guarantee of victory is predominantly based on weakening the enemy forces, on destroying them in their own country, within the resistance. And we are the Trojan horses in the enemy's fortress. Thousands of Jews living in Europe constitute the principal factor in the destruction of our enemy. There, our front is a fact and the most valuable aid for victory." This is absolutely key to understanding the power and strategy of a supranational loyalty with no morality towards the host nation. To Jews living in Europe, Europe is the enemy fortress. If Jews were actually being held in death camps in 1942, they would not be able to weaken and destroy the resistance to Jewish hegemony within the Europeans' own countries, as is this stated goal. And if they are Trojan horses, an enemy slipped behind a sovereign country's borders in order to conquer and subjugate it, how should that host country respond? It seems the only two options are to contain or to expel. This goal of demonizing the Germans was shared by British aristocracy like Lord Beaverbrook, who said, "We want to bring about a deep hatred for the Germans, for German soldiers, sailors, and airmen. We must hate until we win." In 1945, Schicklgruber, in the role of Hitler, confirmed to the Germans and internationals that he hadn't wanted war. "It is untrue that I or anyone else in Germany wanted war in 1939. It was wanted and provoked solely by international statesmen, either of Jewish origin or working for Jewish interests. Nor had I ever wished that after the appalling First World War, there would ever be a second against either England or America. In December of 1945, James Forrestal, U.S. Secretary of the Navy and later Secretary of Defense, wrote in his diary, "Played golf with Joe Kennedy, then U.S. Ambassador to Britain. He says that Chamberlain stated that America and world Jewry forced England into World War II. Chamberlain's replacement with Winston Churchill, the drunken gambler beholden to Jewish benefactors for not losing his estate, would make sure provocation would be made to continue the war after common support in England had lagged. Churchill bombed German civilian cities far behind enemy lines. Did Schicklgruber need to retaliate by bombing London? That certainly didn't help him win a war for which enthusiasm was flagging on the other side, just like Adolf capitulating to the economic boycott with the transfer agreement didn't help Germans in the long run. Like Russia and Iran today, Germany could have upped its self-reliance for a few years and shown the world that it had the moral standards to not bomb civilians. Instead, Schicklgruber played the role in which he had been cast. The thraldom of interest. Gottfried Feder shows the understanding that Jewish finance dominated labor preceded Schicklgruber. It was Feder's German Workers' Party that Adolf infiltrated under the orders of Ludendorff. It was Feder who was at the Beer Hall Putsch, attributed to Hitler. Feder writes, "What do we mean by thraldom of interest? The condition of peoples under the money domination of the finance of the world Jewry. The landowner is under this thraldom, who has to raise loans to finance his farming operations, loans at such high interest as to almost eat up the result of his labor, or who is forced to make debts and to drag the mortgages after him like so much weight of lead. So is the worker producing in shops and factories for a pittance, while the shareholder draws dividends and bonuses which he has not worked for. So is the earning middle class, whose work goes almost entirely to pay the interest on bank overdrafts. So are all who must earn their bread by mental or bodily work, whilst a comparatively small proportion, without labor or trouble, pocket huge profits out of their dividends, speculations, and bank shares." Feder then runs the numbers to compare what the 8 high-finance families dominated by Rothschild would make on 5% interest of their holdings. And he shows that that equals 75% of all of the taxpayers of Prussia. And so 38 million Germans have to live on what the aforementioned billionaires have as a yearly income. Usurping his ideas, Adolf Hitler wrote the foreword to Feder's 1923 treatise, The German State on a National Socialist Foundation. Every great idea needs 2 things, the will to power and clear goals. The will to power, to liberation, lies glowing and strong in our hearts. Gottfried Feder has, in his book, The German State on a Nationalist and Socialist Foundation, presented our goals clearly and simply and in a way understandable to everybody. In it, the hope and longing of millions has found a form and powerful expression. The literature of our movement has in it obtained its catechism. And through Schicklgruber, it would get a catechism of blood. At thirdparadigm.substack.com, I've also linked some related and worthy articles and videos. One is from good citizen, who is always excellent, called Israel as psychopathocracy. And he talks about the expectation of amorality among Jews and the insult of being called a fea, someone who plays by the rules, doesn't cut corners, or do anything to get ahead, including trampling others. He writes, ethno-supremacist psychopaths demanding respect through victimhood fantasies, often created by false flags or banker wars, that serve only for emotional blackmail and financial extortion of useful idiots, an expansion of psychopathic eschatological end-time desires. Meanwhile, every accusation is a confession. Every silent confession that isn't confronted without shame or remorse by their named enemy, Goyim, is a tacit acceptance of and participation in their transgressions, up to and including ongoing ethnic cleansing and genocide of Palestinians. The only solution is to be brave and relentless in calling all of them out. Never bow down or hold back in the face of pressure. I did for many years and I regret it, because I didn't remain loyal to this. Truth fears no scrutiny. Over the past couple of years, it has cost me over 4,000 readers. But as I've stated, I don't give a damn anymore if it costs me 99% of my readership. Many people have no desire to deprogram themselves from a lifetime of mind control operations that have put them through the ringer, especially on this topic, and that's why they'll stay NPCs. And then he has a meme that has 6 volumes by Winston Churchill on the Second World War and says not a single mention of a Holocaust. Then there's a book called Adolf Hitler, Bolshevik and Zionist by Christopher John Birknes. He writes, the Babylonian Talmud predicted 1,500 years ago in the Tractate Sanhedrin, folio 97, that a cruel king would arise from the descendants of Amalek. He would punish the Jews and drive them back to God and to Israel. According to the Gematria of Leviticus 25, the burnt offering of exactly 6 million Jews in a Holocaust would redeem the Jewish people and enable them to return to Palestine and build a Jewish nation after nearly 2,000 years of exile. This had to happen in the year 1948. The Zionists commissioned this king and set him on the throne of the Third German Empire in 1933. Another book is called Adolf Hitler, Enemy of the German People by Michael Hoffman. From it, excavating the occult initiation of Hitler, his Nazi ideology of self-worship, and his first high-profile murders of his own colleagues. The culmination of his thesis is his review of the invasion of Soviet Russia by Hitler, demonstrating that it had no chance of victory, and was, in fact, a mass suicide operation by a reckless, apocalyptic gambler who saw himself transcending the fate of the burned, beaten, and prostrate German people as he was transfigured into the presiding spirit of Götterdämmerung, the final act of Wagnerian legend. Another Substack is The Venetian Conspiracy by Webster Tarpley, which is summarized on Lies Are Unbecoming. He writes, imagine Venice as an ancient, intelligent parasite that has been feeding on human civilization for over 1,500 years. But unlike any ordinary parasite, this one has mastered the art of making its host destroy each other while it grows stronger. Picture a cunning tapeworm that doesn't just feed on one body, but has learned to jump between hosts, manipulating each host's immune system to attack other healthy bodies, instead of recognizing the real threat. When one host grows weak, the parasite smoothly transfers to a stronger one, bringing along all its accumulated knowledge and resources. And then there are 3 different ones that were reposted by Mark Elsis of Earth Newspaper. One is The Khazars by Benjamin Friedman, also an internet archive of Benjamin Friedman's book, Facts Are Facts, The Truth About Khazars. A Jewish Defector Warns America, which is also Benjamin Friedman. And last, an Unz review by Spencer Quinn of Albert Lindemann's Esau's Tears, Modern Anti-Semitism and the Rise of the Jews. It states, he strives to make 2 major points. One, that many ideas and episodes from history, which today would be labeled anti-Semitic, were in fact perfectly reasonable, based in truth, and the result of demonstrably bad Jewish behavior. Lindemann never fails to present Jews of the past feeling this way as well, thereby qualifying them as anti-Semites by today's utopian standards. And 2, that such pushback against Jews did not and does not lead inexorably to mass murder. This is the thesis which many leftist historians wish us to swallow, and Lindemann strikes out against it. Before the First World War, anti-Semitism never gained much of a foothold in Western or Southern Europe or in Hungary. Yes, its presence was stronger in Germany and Austria due to their larger Jewish populations, but even in these places, it never enjoyed prolonged mainstream popularity. It was only in Romania and Russia where it was so common that it did not need demagogues or ideologues to prop it up. According to my reading of Lindemann, the tepid success of anti-Semitism resulted not only from European forbearance, but also because assimilated Jews and the Sephardim were in general better behaved and more respectful of their Gentile hosts than were the pushy, ill-mannered Ashkenazic Ostjuden, who often ruthlessly pursued money or revolution. And to follow up, here is Gottfried Feder, and this is the playlist on World War Truth. Thank you for joining me in this vigorous inquiry.